Hi everybody, I'm coming to you from my very messy craft room to bring you a masculine card today. So I want to tell you generally the theory that we're going to use with this card is clean and simple. So clean and simple cards have a lot of white space. To me, they are difficult because a lot of times I want to fill that space up. But with this masculine card, we're going to use one of my favorite color combos. We're going to use some geometric shapes and some texture. So if you've gotten to this video, you should have the VIP All Access Pass from the Card Maker Success Summit. So make sure you catch the replay if you didn't see me live with the full masculine card video. This one is just one particular card that I did not do during the other series and that I wanted to save just for you guys. So I hope that you like it. We'll get right into it. Here's where we're going with this card. It's got lots of texture and it's going to be really fun. We're going to start with these products and I'm going to call them out to you, but of course they will be linked in the description. This color combo has 2 different shades of orange, 2 different shades of blue, and 1 green. Now you could add all kinds of things into this color combo, but this is one of my favorites, so I wanted to share it with you. The stamps, we're going to be using some triangle stamps, we're going to be using some sentiments, and we're going to get started with the sentiment. And the reason being is because this is going to be the middle of our triangles, and so you need to know how long of a sentiment you're going to use to know where your triangles are going. So we're going to use Happy Birthday. I do think when you're picking a masculine sentiment that you want to pick something that has a very masculine font. I really love these because they actually kind of almost like a reverse stamp. They stamp black and leave the middle whatever color your paper is behind it. So this is called Label Love, and we've got lots of options. We've got You Are Awesome, we have Thank You, Happy Birthday, all kinds of things that I think would work for any masculine card. I'm going to stick with Happy Birthday because I always need birthday cards for men. Now as far as stamping goes, especially if you're a new stamper, this is a MISTI stamping tool. You can use an acrylic block, you can use whatever you want to, but with this stamp, I really like being able to stamp a couple of times because that reverse stamp, if you get too much ink in the little wells that make the letters, then you're going to end up covering up your stamp. So you want to very lightly stamp. So I'm going to lightly stamp with this VersaFine Nocturne is the color ink. And this VersaFine Clair ink is very dark. It's great. If you are using an acrylic block, you'll probably get a pretty good impression with your first stamp. And it's one of the darkest black inks that I have. I love it because of that reason. You can see that I'm really lightly pressing and I get a good textured, distressed look this way, but I like mine to be just a little bit darker. So I'm going to do this again, once again, very light tapping, because if I press too hard, I am going to spread ink into those little wells that say Happy Birthday, and it's going to cover up some of the letters. So I'm just adding a little bit, barely touching it, and that's what we'll go with for a sentiment. The other thing about this type of sentiment stamp is that you already have the area that you're going to cut out. You know, sometimes you're stamping a sentiment and then you need to go use your paper trimmer and cut everything up. I feel like this gives you the lines that you're going to use, so I'm going to use simple scissors to cut this out. I do say with these type of stamps, make sure you clean out the stamp so you don't leave any black ink in those wells, or it'll mess up your stamp next time. Okay, so I gave this a little bit of time to dry. You want to make sure that you don't have ink on your hands. I'm really bad about getting that black ink on my hands and spreading it around the paper. And then I'm going to take scissors and cut this. So I figure that it gives me the lines to cut. If I mess up a little bit and leave a little white on the edge, that is very easy to fix. So I'm just going to use some large scissors and cut this in the rectangle, and then I'm going to show you how to make it look like it's a piece of black. So I'm double checking my hands, make sure that I'm not spreading any ink. You can always hit this with a heat tool to make sure your ink is dry, but I'm going to add some more ink and probably get a little bit messier here, and I'll show you how to do that in a neat way. And of course, if you're not good with your scissors, you can use a paper trimming tool to do this. I just am in something that's this small, I'm a little bit better. You see how there's a white outline on this? You can leave that perfectly fine, but I'm going to show you a way that I think just gives your project a little bit more depth and can take care of that. So I am going to use some tweezers for this. I'm going to get my ink pad and I'm going to dab the edges. Okay, so doing this, it's going to make it look like I have stamped white on a black piece of paper is really what it's going to do. And if I've got any edges that I didn't get cut correctly, instead of going back in and trying to get it cut exactly right, I'm just going to touch them with the black ink and you cannot tell. So I'm going all the way around this, being very gentle and very careful. But it's an easy way just to add a little bit more depth. I think having this black all the way around just makes it stand out on your card a little bit better. So I wanted you to know that trick. It's just one of those tricks of the trade that really gives your card a little bit of extra. You see that I'm being very careful with the ink, but let me show you. See how it looks like it's black on the edges now? I just love that look, and I think it really adds to your card. So just so you know, everything that I use in this video will be linked in the description. So make sure you go through that if you're going shopping today, or if you're just looking at different websites. That always helps me out, and I appreciate it so much. The other thing that will be in the description are my links to all my social media. I produce a lot of reels, a lot of shorts, a lot of videos, and I would love you to be a part of my community. So please consider going through those and subscribing to my different channels. I would love it. Okay, let's get on with this card. So we're going to carefully set this aside to dry, and now we're going to start working on our panel for our triangles. I want to show you a trick with this MISTI. I'm going to flip it over to the back, and I'm going to use the magnets to hold the paper down. And the reason I'm doing this is so that I can create some measurements on here very lightly with a pencil, so we know where we're going to start our triangles and we know that we have our triangles level. So I'm using a T-ruler, which is actually made by the same people that make this stamp positioner, and the reason I'm putting this extra white piece is just so you can see the measurements. So it's got measurements on both edges, and it's real hard for you to see those through this black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a line at 2 1/4 up this panel. So I'm going to use this side, make myself a dot at that area wherever it is. I'm making sure I've got everything centered, and then I'm moving over and keeping my T-ruler to where everything is level, and I'm going to make a dot at 2.25. This dot is so small that I tried zooming in on it to let you see the dot, but you just cannot see it. I really do very light pencil marks because I don't want to have any trouble erasing them. So I'm going to go to that line and I'm going to create a level line and draw it. Next, I'm going to look at my sentiment and decide where it ends, because I don't want my triangles to go past where the happy birthday goes. So we're going to make some more dots just so we know how to line up our triangles as well. So I get the happy birthday on that line and I leave a little bit of space on the left, and I'm just making myself a very small dot right here, and that just lets me know that's going to be the end. I had made a couple and I just fixed one, so that's why I'm using a little bit of eraser. But I've got a dot at the end, so I know how this is going to fit on here, and I know how I want to get my triangles into that space. Now we're going to get out our triangle set. This is called Sohcahtoa, and there are several size triangles in this. We're going to use the large, the medium, and the small, not the extra small. And we're using all equilateral triangles, so not any, it's got other options there, I can't remember what those are called, but this one is going to be just your basic triangle. And I'm going to start with the largest of these triangles. I think it makes more sense to start with the largest because you're trying to fit everything on this line, and I know that I want to do at least 2 large triangles, so I'm going to go ahead and get those set out and then arrange around them. So remember, we have 2 colors of orange. We've got Marigold and Snapdragon. I'm going to use Marigold for this large triangle. And I'm also going to pick up this stamp with my window here. So as you close this, this has grid lines on it. So if you have a MISTI, you know this, but I'm making sure that that stamp is level with the grid lines because I know I've already got my piece of paper level. So just double checking my measurements, especially when you're making something that's geometric like this. You don't want anything to be off. So double check that everything is level frequently, and then we're going to start stamping. And I do not want to press this too hard because I want to be very clear on my edges of this. So I'm going to stamp once, and then then if I need to add some more ink, I will stamp again. So here's the first stamp, and I'm going to put some light pressure on there, and then we'll look at it and see if we need to add some more ink. So it's mostly covered, and the way this ink works, it should fill it in, but since I'm doing this for demonstration purposes, I want it to look good before it's even dry. So we're going to go ahead and add one more layer to that stamp. And that definitely gives it a more solid look, as you can see from this stamp. So I've cleaned and dried my stamp, and now I'm lining it up, and I know you see that I'm overlapping and I've got a line there, but I like to overlap because my sentiment is going to cover up the middle of these, and I don't want to take too much of the card face up by doing, see how it covers that? You gotta know about how thick it is to decide, but I don't want to take up too much card space. I want to leave myself a lot of white on this card, so I'm overlapping underneath where the happy birthday is going to go. Once I have that placed, I'm going to use Dusk, which is my lighter of the blue colors. So I'm adding this right here, and you see they do overlap. I am going to stamp it twice like I did with the last one, and can you see my pencil line there? I'm going to draw a pointer to it so you see how much extra room we have. So I'm going to stamp a second time just to make sure I get good coverage. I'm going to do this with all of them. And then we're going to clean that one off and move to the middle size triangle. Now this one we're going to use quite a few times. We are going to stamp 4 triangles with this, and we're going to use it on both sides of our center line. So I'm going to go through showing you the inks and what I did with that. This one I'm using the lighter orange, which is called Snapdragon, and I'm going to use this a few times because this color over some of the others actually creates a green. So you see how that little bitty triangle of this looks green, and I think that just really adds to the design. And just like before everyone, I'm always double checking my sentiment, making sure I've got my triangles lined up the way I want to, and I will stamp another one right here. So this medium triangle is going to be Fresh Leaf, which is the green color, and this green, I picked it because it's similar to what the orange and the blue make when they cross each other. So I think it just adds an extra, it's almost like having 2 different green shades. I'm double checking that it's level on the bottom with this grid, and then we'll stamp. And like all the others, we'll stamp it twice. I love how this green coordinates. We're going to use our darkest blue, which is called Desert Night, and we're going to stamp an upside down triangle on the bottom here with this really dark blue. I've lined everything up already. We'll get that stamped, and we're going to finish putting this card together. We've got to do a couple more triangles, and we will be done. Sticking with that medium triangle, and I'm going to add one more Snapdragon on the top. And that's just because it makes such beautiful colors with that fresh leaf, with the dusk. They just overlap so well. And now I'm going to use one small triangle on the bottom just to even out the design. It really helps to have odd numbers of clusters, and so I'm trying to do an odd number of triangles. So this is one more, and it just fills this little gap in. And we're going to use the fresh leaf just so we've got some green on our bottom layer. And then we will start adding texture and sentiments, and I'm going to teach you some tricks with that. Okay, so last triangle looks so good, and of course I did stamp it twice. Here's what it's going to look like with the happy birthday over it, but we've got to add some texture to add some extra interest to this card, so I'll show you what I'm going to use. So this is from my cross stitching days. It's just black DMC floss, and you could use any type of little black thread or whatever you want to use. It could be any color that coordinates with this. I just liked adding the black. I thought that looked very elegant, and I'm only going to use one strand of it, but I'm going to cut myself a decent amount of length, and I'm going to do that so that I've got options to wrap and make it look messy. Okay, people make this look so good, but it really is kind of a process of just playing with it. I like to wrap mine around, and I'm spreading my fingers apart about as far as I think it needs to go on the card. And then once you lay your sentiment down, you can kind of mess with it. If you've got some liquid glue, you can kind of pull it different ways. If I don't like what I did, then or the size that I wrapped it, I will change the distance and rewrap. So I'm gonna actually shortening it a little bit, wrapping it around, and then trying to lay it down in that wrap on the card. I set this piece of thread apart. Right now we got a couple things we need to clean up. So I've got this big eraser from Altenew, and I'm going to erase the areas that may stick out beyond my sentiment. So I don't want you to see any of those dots that I made. I'm not gonna worry about what I've stamped over because that's gonna be covered up by my sentiment. So there's no reason for that. Just get your edges and make sure you've got it really erased well without tearing up the paper. Now we're ready to put together these front pieces. So I've used some little strips of foam adhesive and I'm putting it behind my sentiment, and then I'm straightening it out, make sure it's good and flat because that does make a difference. And I'm not sticking it down yet. I'm getting my thread kind of how I want it to be arranged on the card, just in general, because we're about to stick our sentiment over there. I just want to make sure I've got some loops on both sides. I'm not worried about that extra little tail. I'll show you what to do with it. Next, we need to take the backing off of our foam strip, and I'm still not going to stick it down because I want to add glue to the back of this foam strip so that I can move it around. I got a little bit too much, so I'm going to have to spread that out with a needle because I don't want it to smush all over my stamp. So I'm kind of spreading out my adhesive, and I'm going to cover this whole thing, and then when we put it down, we'll be able to move it around a little bit. We'll be able to tuck our strings into it and really get a lot of movement out of it before it's official and stuck where it needs to be. I'm sure you're asking, why in the world did I not use a glue with a smaller tip just to get a very small bit on there? But Gina K Connect glue to me is the glue that I have the most freedom to move an item. So I'm trying to use it, but it has a little bit bigger tip, which caused me a little trouble with this. But it really, I mean, I've been spreading it for, you know, a minute. It's still going to be wet, and I'm still going to have movement when I add it to the card. I also grabbed my T-ruler again just to make sure everything's straight. Now I can take my tweezers and mess with these little loops here to get it however you want it. Now, what to do with this little end tag? We're going to stick it, like I said, there's liquid glue under that foam tape, so you can use tweezers and little pointy tools and just stick it right under there. If all else fails, you can add a little bit of glue to it and glue it to the back. But see how that worked? It looks great. Now, all this card needs is a backing, so you can choose which color you want to match and create a little bit of an outline for the card. I'm going to show you two color combos so that you can see what I mean. Okay, you can change the whole look of a card just by using a different color behind it. Right here we have navy, then orange. Orange to me is a brighter, more exciting. The navy is a little bit more refined, but I went with the orange because I just felt like that was more happy birthday and exciting. Here you can see some of the dimension and texture. I just love it. I hope that all of you love this card and had fun doing this class with me. I appreciate you being here so much. If you are going shopping, go through the links in the description. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Have a great day, guys. Bye!